Okay, so as you've picked up, this is not like any of the other workshops you've been in. There are no PowerPoint slides because it is a visual thinking workshop. That's why we had to reduce the number of people that could come in, because the real estate is smaller than on the projector. Okay, so we are going to ask you, well, let's first introduce ourselves. Yeah. So I'm Angie Doyle. I'm an Agile coach, facilitator, and trainer at IQ Business.
And I'm Talia Lancaster. I'm a Scrum Master and graphic recorder at IQ Business. We did put our names on the back of our shirts because some people think we look similar. So
a fat version and a thin version, apparently. I don't see it. So, so I want to first kick off just by asking, how many of you were once children? I'm expecting lots of hands. Everybody was a kid. None of you were, I don't know, superheroes that were created.
I'm hoping to see everyone's hands up. Right?
Yes, keep your hands up. How many of you like to draw as kids? Can't remember? Your mom would know. How many of you still like to draw? Okay, so there's a couple of you that are still enjoying drawing. If you are a seasoned artist, you are welcome to go find another workshop, because this is really about some introductory things. We are not going to teach you to be artists. Okay, it is about visual thinking, and we're going to explain what that is. And before we do anything else, what you're going to do is you're going to open up your booklet on the first page, and you will see something that says you're drawing here. Okay, so don't worry, I'm going to talk you through it. Okay. The reality is, all of us can draw, and we drew as kids. And what happened? Why did you stop? For those of you that did stop, what happened? Life happens? Someone laughed at it. Someone said that that's not good because it's not photorealistic, or it's not lifelike, it's not art. So we actually stopped drawing because we are intimidated. And because it's not artistic, we think it's bad. And the reality is, we need to start incorporating visuals into the way that we work, because 65% of people in your teams are visual learners. 65%. And yet we don't do this in schools. We don't encourage kids to think visually. We encourage them to think in a way that is easiest for teachers to teach, which is not incorporating visuals. Guys that have come in, there's a handful of seats that are open.
4 seats up here.
If you've got a space, seat next to you, just raise your hand, just so they know where to go. Okay, so let's do that first drawing, because we're going to get it over and done with. And I'm going to talk you through it. Okay, just so you can actually see you do know how to draw. You've just forgotten how to do it. So, can everybody kind of see this? I'm going to talk you through it step by step as well. Sorry, Niraj. What I want you to do is, in the middle of your picture, kind of like a medium-sized square, in the middle of your picture, like this. Draw that. Everybody, grab a pen and draw. You can use the markers.
There are also markers on the table, yeah.
And what have you got? Everybody got one. Everybody got a chicken. Does it look like a chicken?
I can see some. They're really good.
So quickly lift it up to me. Show me your chickens. I want to see them. Yeah, so you all can draw. You just drew a chicken. This is how easy it is. Okay. So what we're going to do through the course of the workshop is we're just going to teach some very simple techniques. A lot of them you know already. You just may not know how to tie them in together, but we're going to teach this kind of thinking. Okay, cool.
Okay, so when Angie and I were putting this course together, what struck us is that we actually use visuals a lot already. So we kind of looked around in our daily lives, and it goes cross-language, cross-culture. We're already using visuals every day.
Olga, there's spaces if you want.
Oh, do we have more people? So we actually use visuals every day. So we actually found some kind of commonly used signs. So without any words, what does this mean?
Can you guys
100%.
see over there? Do it like they do in the boxing ring.
Toxic, danger. Okay, so it's not good. So you wouldn't drink something if it were on it, right?
Not unless you're a pirate.
Okay. No one's going to light up a cigarette in here. And then this, if you don't know what this means, I'd be a bit worried. Maybe you're scaring some people of the opposite gender. Okay, so visuals are actually around us everywhere on a daily basis.
And sometimes we get them wrong. What is this a sign of? Apparently, you feed your kids to the crocodiles here. Because if it was a don't do it, what would it have? A cross through it. Okay, so that one's a little bit odd. This one, Talia and I were traveling 2 weeks ago, and we saw this one a lot. You see this on the hand dryers in bathrooms. And it's like press the button and then receive the bacon, because that's what it looks like. It's like, what? These ones, guys, at the back, you might not see them, so I'm just going to describe it. All of us have seen that caution, slippery when wet sign. So this guy changed it, and he said snakes will chase you, because it looks like there's snakes stuck to his heel. This one's got to be my favorite. Apparently in the States, if you see someone drowning, you laugh out loud. Terrible. Lol. It's like terrible. Okay, so sometimes we do get visuals wrong. It's okay. When you do get your visuals wrong just out of interest, you just need to support it with some text. Because what visual thinking is about it's about leaving the words that make the most sense. So it's not only about pictures.
Okay, so why do we advocate visual thinking? I don't know if people maybe think we're hippies and we're just here to kind of draw pretty pictures, but as Angie said, it's actually about thinking and it's not about art, okay? So why we use visual thinking, this is from an amazing lady, Suni Brown. She's fantastic, she's got a great book. And essentially there are a couple of reasons. So it's about seeing the bigger picture. So often kind of if we're not able to visualize something, we can't see how things fit together, or the problem kind of overwhelms us. It also heightens engagement. So you'll see if you use this in your teams, it becomes quite a fun way to actually get people checked into the session, because you're actually using your whole body, you're all kind of involved and engaged in the session. You also tap into different ways of thinking. So you tap into strategic, you tap into tactical, and also creative ways of thinking. So that's something that we need kind of now in terms of like innovation and all of that. We need to think from different angles. Despite popular belief, visual thinking and drawing and that in meetings actually reduces meeting time. And it can reduce it by up to 24%. So a lot of people think, oh, you're wasting time, you're just drawing things. It actually helps people make sure that they're on the same page. It helps you focus your conversation, and you can get through sessions a lot quicker. It also taps into the 4 modes of learning. So Angie mentioned the visual learners. So visual learners are up to about 65% of people. You also have your traditional kind of read-write. You also have your auditory, so kind of listening, and your tactile. I always get this word wrong.
Kinesthetic, yeah.
Yeah,
the guys that
kinesthetic.
move movement.
So you're moving. So actually if you're drawing and you're encouraging other people to draw, you're moving while you're having that conversation. And then lastly, it becomes a shared record for the team. So if you're having a conversation, you've sketched something out, you've done something on the whiteboard, that then becomes a record of that conversation. So if you ever need to pick up the conversation again, you can take a photograph, or we like to work on flip chart, and you can actually use it to continue that conversation in the future.
So very quickly, I'm over here because we've got our agenda, and thinking visually and helping others to think visually, it's important to make stuff like this visual so that you see as we go through topics. It's a technique we use a lot in our Scrum teams, and it is a way of helping others to just know where we are. Okay, so what Talia and I did, we loved some of the visual thinking manifestos that people like Suni Brown and Dan Rome came up with. And what we did is we decided to style our own visual thinking manifesto a la Agile manifesto kind of style. So it was quite interesting because we ran through a few versions of this with our team, our agility team, And we originally were very wordy, which was quite interesting considering it was
Yeah.
a visual thinking manifesto. So they helped us get it down to like the bare essential words. And then someone piped up saying, well, since it's a visual thinking manifesto, we really hope that you've got pictures. And we were like, yeah, it's on
It was
Slack.
on
How do
Slack.
we
So, I
put
mean, we just
visuals?
typed it out.
How
They're
do we
like,
draw
where
it?
are the visuals? We're like, we're getting there.
Getting there. And here they are. So the first line, the first value or line in our visual thinking manifesto is thinking in pictures over explaining in words. Okay, so we want to help people think in pictures, not just you, but other people as well. And we're not saying that words are important. We're saying don't get too wordy. So particularly think long paragraphs. It's a lot more, it's helpful for people to really understand what you're talking about when you include a little bit more of a visual element to it.
Okay, and the second value is shared understanding over individual interpretation. So this is, again, what I mentioned, like if you're trying to tackle a problem, often if you can't visualize it, it either seems too big to tackle or you don't know where to start. So how do you encourage that shared understanding and kind of break it down into a place where you can tackle it, as opposed to just everyone else worrying on their own?
See possibilities over analyzing problems. Very often we get stuck on what the problems are, not what is possible. And again, only explaining in words makes it hard for other people to see what you're talking about. They can't see beyond the problem that they've got in front of them. So we want to help them see the possibilities, not just focus on those problems.
And the last one is, I feel like I'm in a game show. Okay, the last one is embrace humanists over seeking precision. So we're not here today to make beautiful masterpieces that we want to sell for millions of rands. Okay, we want to actually embrace the fact that maybe our drawings are a little bit skew and they're not symmetrical. That's fine. Okay, it's about the thinking, it's about the conversation and the learning, and not the art.
So just the fact that when you are facilitating sessions, the fact that it is hand-drawn will encourage people to participate more. It is very hard when you've got a PowerPoint slide to actually go and make corrections or contribute to it, because if you did it with a Koki, someone's going to get really cross with you because it's going to stay there long after the slide's moved on. So you want to get people to actually pick up a pen and contribute. This isn't about, again, it's not just about an individual interpretation. We wanted to get that shared understanding. Okay.
Cool.
How do you feel so far about the Visual Thinking Manifesto? Because this is what we're going to be focusing on now. We want to start teaching you techniques to start applying this. And the first thing that you've got to do when you think visually is get better at writing. Very often what happens when we facilitate is we have a terrible handwriting. It's okay when you are just making some crude notes for yourself in a presentation, but when you are actually working on a flip chart or on a whiteboard, you have to practice a writing that you can do on a vertical surface, and you can do it fast and it's legible. And what we've come up with, well, it's a technique that exists in the visual facilitation world. And you kind of take your real estate and you divide it into 5. So you can see there's 5 little quadrants. And you split your letters in there, like this. So if you've got an A, you're going to fill up the middle 3. Your B is going to take the section up at the top, and so on. Okay, it gives you a really, really nice, big, clear font. One of the tricks with writing is not to do your letters too close together when you are helping others kind of, facilitate a conversation. So what we do between our letters is you've got to leave a big space, and it's bigger than you think it is. It's got to be about the size of an M. That's a nice, an M or a W. It's a really, really big space, because when people are looking from a distance, if you don't leave enough of a space, your words will become completely illegible. And you would then start the next letters after that. Okay, so that's a really good way to start practicing. And the nice thing is, how many letters are there in the alphabet? 26. So you get to play with how many? 52 characters. Okay, uppercase and lowercase. So you've got to get this done well before you move on. And when you can write fast and legibly, you can start doing something a little more. See if you can read this from a distance. Okay, don't use fancy stuff. Okay, unless you're doing it for headings. You'll see all of our posters have got some cool headings. It's just to give you some ideas on how you can play around with headings. But you wouldn't do this if you're facilitating a workshop. You'd actually do this prep up front. Okay, very quickly, just practice writing in your booklets because we don't want you to forget this. Really important, the bulk of your letter is in the middle 3, the top of your letter is in the top 5th, and the tail is in the bottom 5th.
Can you use a marker?
So just do like ABC, just to remind you. So look here and just
your
get
name
a reminder.
or
The
something.
middle 3 is
Yeah.
where you're going to focus your letters. And then you can play around with your caps. So what are you looking for? Like a G. So you would do the bulk of the G there, and the tail would go there. Just a little tail.
The
And
top,
just-
the ascender and the descender take up
Yes.
1/5
Yeah.
each. You know,
And
they
the
wouldn't
trick
take up
with this
more.
is these sometimes get too long, and they start going over what you've written in the row below. So keep them short. Otherwise, they actually end up getting quite messy if they're too long. Another tip, use letters like this. There's a reason why graffiti artists, if they do a lowercase a, which is very seldom because they tend to work in caps, but if they do a lowercase a, they're going to do an A like that because it's very visual that it's an A. Sometimes it looks like a D or a U or something like that. So use letters
yeah.
like this that you actually would see on a computer. Get used to writing them like that. It just gets a lot clearer.
Does a T go all the way to the top?
T would be
Yeah.
like that. So that bottom piece is only for the tail, the descender. Okay, once you've got your lettering down, okay, then you are ready to advance to the next step. And that is something you know already, which is connectors and separators. So when we talk about connectors and separators, we're talking about things like, what's that? A bullet point. Okay, why do we say bullet points are connectors? Because they can connect information anywhere with each other. If you use the same bullet point, it implies that that is the same level. A trick with using bullet points and numbering. When you're facilitating a conversation, never use numbers unless you are indicating a priority. Okay, we work in Agile teams. We know that numbers imply priority. So use bullet points to kind of group things together, then use numbers to imply priorities. You can always come back and do something like that if you need to. It's going to be a lot harder to do that after the fact if you've already used numbers to list. Okay, so that's the whole concept of bullet points. You can also bring in some fun ideas with bullet points. So what we often do is we'll often use bullet points like that. And then as we go through a point on an agenda, we come in and tick it. So if you don't have it completed, it means it was never done. So again, you can use bullet points in a fun way as well.
Nice idea, like a dot could be like work in progress, and then you could tick it. Or, you know, there's lots of meaning actually around it.
Okay. So another way of connecting ideas is lines. Okay, lines are really simple. We all draw them currently. What do you think just a solid straight line could mean between two ideas? They're linked. They're somehow connected. How is it different if we draw little dotted lines? So maybe it's connected. If you think about organograms, what does a dotted line mean? It's like an indirect reporting. Maybe it's indirectly connected. Okay, you can come up with some kind of key that you and your team know. And how would this one be different? Very connected, strongly connected, and all you've done is you've just done that with lines. The nice thing about lines is they create a lot of movement and flow. So they actually direct your attention somewhere on a page. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to draw attention to something specific. Arrows are also a good way of showing movement. And there's different ways you can do your arrows. Okay, and we can also use arrows to lines to highlight an idea. And finally, we can separate it by containing it. And we're going to talk about containers a little bit later again. Okay, so there is some, again, follow as you go in your workbook. So as we're doing this, just to serve as a visual reminder for you later. Okay, so this is cool. We all know how to do that. So let's move on to something that people love drawing, which is people. Why do you think it's important to learn how to draw a person? Because we're not talking about like a realistic image here. But why do you think we'd want to incorporate people into our visuals? Personal, yeah, because people like to see people, because we're people. So we want to see people on the page.
It's been quite a big theme this conference. It's about people.
It is about people. So don't be scared about drawing people. The good old default guy that we or girl that we always go to is this one, your stick man or stick girl. We had to be very politically correct at our last conference because it was in the States. So there were a lot of things that we had to be very, very careful about.
In the south of the States,
Yeah,
so it
in
was
the
very
south.
conservative.
So this is our stick person. Another one to draw, which is my default. You can always see the posters I've drawn because it's always got these little guys, which is your chess man. Easiest way to do it is start with the head and then draw a chess body underneath. That's the simplest way to do it. This guy is also a really great way to get a quick crowd. And instantly you've got a meeting, okay, because now there's multiple people there. I like to take this guy one step further, and what I do is I give him arms and legs. Okay, really, really simple. Another very quick one is the Starman. So if you're pressed for time, this one might work well for you. The only thing that you tend to battle with these guys is you battle to get movement. So if you're trying to get movement, which is what we're wanting with people, go with something like a block man. So what you do is you draw the head, and you draw the block of the body in the direction that you want to move. So in this case, I'm going to do this. What do you think he's doing? Doesn't look like it's not doing that. It's running. It's a speed puff. Okay, so we'll put little sweat drops just to give it some perspective. But he's moving to the right of the page. We know that because the speed puff is behind him on the left. A good trick to do with people is put them into perspective on the page. So give them a bit of a background. It just helps the human eye. When people are just kind of floating, sometimes it's a bit distracting. And it's like silly to think, but people focus on stuff like that when you're facilitating. So if you need to, put them into some kind of time and space and give them a little bit of perspective.
Okay, cool. So I think there is an activity in your book where you can draw someone jumping.
Jumping, do it quick. Try draw someone jumping. A good way to draw someone jumping is how would someone jump? They'd put their legs out to the side and probably raise their hands. Did you demonstrate?
I tried to, but I mean, it's I'm not going to actually leave the ground. I'll just. And it's also great to actually watch people. So I mean, you can watch people if they sit or if they're doing something and copy them.
Okay, everybody got a good jumping person. And you can even do little movement lines to kind of just re-emphasize what's happening. So maybe little like brackets around where their knees are to give the indication that they're lifting.
Okay. Nice. I see lots of jumping men or women.
Very good.
Okay, so now that you guys have mastered people, I'll give you a sec. Okay. So you guys have got people down. You're comfortable. Stick people. That's all. Okay. Now we're going to move on to faces. Okay, so again, as Angie said, why is it important to draw faces? So you're having a conversation about a new product that you're building, I don't need to know how to draw a face. Why must I draw a face?
Say it louder. 2, show emotion.
Show emotion. Cool. Because at the end of the day, we work with people, we build software for people, and we should be capturing that in our conversations, and we should be speaking about that openly.
And I mean, it's great that we're with an Agile team because you guys know that you deal with emotions every day because you deal with people. Sometimes when we do this workshop, we do occasionally do it with people like a non-Agile crowd, and they're like, no, we don't have any emotions in our team. I'm like, I bet you do, and you just don't realize it. Completely ignorant to the fact that you're working with people who just are naturally very emotional beings.
Yeah, and it's good, and we should bring that to the forefront of our conversations as well. Also, if you capture emotion, it helps people remember that conversation better. So if there's actually like an emotive element to it, when you have the conversation again or follow-on conversation, people remember that easily. Okay, so drawing faces. Who here is afraid of drawing faces? Yeah, listen, okay, and I feel you. It is very daunting because maybe we're wanting to draw them quite artistically. So we're going to teach you a few tricks that are quite quick and easy. So in terms of drawing faces, you can do very simple kind of eyes. So that's just a circle and like some little upside down M's. This is my favorite eyes, like a little circle, and then I just give it an eyelid.
That looks like the Scooby-Doo eyes. I've been trying to figure out where I've seen it, but I think it's one of the characters in the Scooby-Doo cartoon has those eyes. Yeah, it does.
Well, there we go. Cartoonist already, guys. It's very easy. And then you can get a bit more fancy and maybe do like these even more kind of cartoony eyes and maybe just like a little V for a nose. At this point, what do you think these people are feeling? What is the emotion? It's hard to tell, right? So, and that's the trick, is that actually a lot of the emotion comes across through the eyebrows and the mouths. Okay, so those are kind of your basic elements. We can show emotion quite quickly just by adding some eyebrows and mouths. So what do you think she's feeling now? Sad, afraid. Okay. Angry. Is that your customer? Ooh, I'm worried. Okay. Other than the fact that maybe he needs a tweeze, it's maybe a bit like ambiguous. I mean, what do you call it? Okay, cool. So actually, an easy way to do this, so this is by Dave Gray, and it's a face grid, okay? So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 elements, and we're going to repeat it, eyebrows and mouths, and we're going to create a whole bunch of emotions. Okay, so it is in your book if you want to follow along. So if the top line is your eyebrow, and then the side left column is your mouth, then you can essentially actually just go through it and create a whole bunch of emotions. Thought that was me for a second.
Wow. You won't believe the wind. It's like a dust storm outside.
Okay. What happened? Oh, is it? Oh, wow. Let's just stay in here, guys. It's fine. Okay, so that's how you can actually really quickly and easily create a whole variety of emotions without having to be an artist. Okay, so don't feel that you need to do all of these elaborate things. There are some ideas in the booklet as well around noses and eyes and all of that that you can look into. Okay, you guys ready? Are you still filling out the grid? Okay. Cool, so you're more comfortable with faces now. Do you think you could draw the faces? Okay. Cool, and now onto something that scares people probably even more, is drawing icons or pictures or objects. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is to actually take an object and to break it down into basic shapes. So if you take pretty much anything, it can be broken down into a square or a circle or a triangle or a line. Okay? So for example, and this blew my mind when I first saw this because I always battled, is a puzzle piece. So if you take a puzzle piece, start with a square, okay, and then add circles to that square. And then essentially all you do is you go around that square, and then you go maybe out for some, in for the others, out. Let's go out. And there's your puzzle piece. Okay, so instead of having to, thank you. Okay, so instead of having to overcomplicate it, it's actually just circles and squares. Another example, which I use quite a lot in my sketchnoting and that, is a light bulb. Light bulb is basically just a circle and a little rectangle. If you want to do a really basic one, you can just make it circle, and then you just add your lines in and a little squiggly, and if you want, you can also add your glowing lines to emphasize it. If you want to be a bit more artistic with a light bulb, you could start with a circle, put your rectangle slightly below it, and then just join it up. And that gives you that shape. And then just your lines and your squiggly. So the objective is to draw things with as few lines and as quickly as possible, and not to overcomplicate it. And often you find the complication comes in with very kind of organic, flowy lines. So break it down into your basic shapes. Another example, if you take two triangles, you can do a fish. Maybe add a bit of a detailed little circle for an eye, and then some circles for your bubble. Okay, so again, I mean, maybe you would have tried to do it a bit more kind of artistically. And then lines, for example, if you want to draw a flip chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and you've got a flip chart. Because essentially all we're trying to do is actually convey an idea. We don't have to make it artistic as long as people know this is a flip chart. And if you really feel like it doesn't look like a flip chart,
people are very forgiving.
Yeah.
So if you draw something and it doesn't quite look like what your brain said and your hand couldn't quite do it, label it. No one, when you're up in front of people, I promise you, no one cares. Okay, they're just happy that you're drawing and it's not them. So.
And if it is funny, you have a little laugh and it kind of wakes everyone up again. So it's great. It's quite engaging.
Okay,
yeah,
so
like the dust cloud.
So we're going to do a quick exercise on basic shapes, because this is one of the absolutely fundamental concepts in visual thinking. It's about getting over being artistic and coming back to being human and breaking it down into the simplest pieces that you can. So you've all got big folders in the center of your table. They've got some colored pieces of card in it. You're going to see there's a couple of shapes that you've got. You've got squares, triangles, circles, lines. You've got an arch. I think, what else have we got in there? I think you've got like a house shape. Just one thing, you'll see you've also got pipe cleaners. The reason we've got pipe cleaners is because we can't cut you out a squiggle. We tried and it doesn't work. You're going to have to do a 3D effect with the pipe cleaner. And we're going to give you 5 minutes as a table to come up with as many objects as you can. Before you start, I'm going to give you some hints. When we say objects, don't go complicated. Think house, tree, snowman, cat, handbag. Okay, we're talking about very, very basic objects. Try to create as many of them as you can in the next 5 minutes. And the winner wins.
It's a competition. I don't know what you win yet.
So guys, just remember to keep it PG. I've seen some interesting shapes. Okay? It is getting filmed. Just over 1 minute left. Last few seconds. No, I just stuck it on.
That's not Angie getting a phone call. That's time up.
Okay, guys,
Okay.
time's up. How many of you got over 20 objects? No, collectively as a team, not individually, as a team. Yeah, more than 20, more than 10. Yeah, most people. Okay. Okay, how many? Over 20. So most of you collectively
Okay,
as a
guys.
group got more than 20 objects. Okay. So when you start breaking them down into their simplest pieces, they're a lot easier. Now, keep this in your brain because we're going to do something just now where you're going to have to think back to this exercise. Okay. But Talia will quickly take you through the next.
Okay, cool. So you guys comfortable with basic shapes? It's quite a nice thing that you can do. You can actually walk around your house, look at objects, figure out how you would draw them really simply. Yeah. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is containers. So Angie mentioned it briefly under the connector section, is containing ideas. Okay, so I use this a lot. Again, it depends what you're trying to do. If you're working with teams, containing ideas helps organize the ideas, and it can also have maybe like an emotive or a kind of underlying meaning. I use it a lot in sketchnoting as well, if I'm taking notes in a session, also just to kind of contain and break up the information. So an important thing with containers is to always do the text first. Okay, so if you've got your text, then contain it. Why? Have you guys ever seen this, where you're kind of drawing something and you're up in front of everyone and you're like, okay, so we need to talk about the conversation. And you hit this point, you're like, oh, I've still got to fit 4 letters into this space. and you end up kind of doing something like that. Okay. So if you're doing containers, try and do the text first, because then you know exactly where your boundaries should be. What do you think the difference? So the first container I drew is just a really simple square or rectangular box. Second one is a little bit more rounded. What do you think the difference is there?
One is a statement and the other is a thought.
Cool, 100%. So one is like a statement. This is like a conversation, like a call out.
Formal versus casual.
Yeah, so it may also there's a lot of psychological kind of underlying messages there as well. Is, if you're having a conversation, something's very rigid, it may be square. If something's a bit more flexible and informal, it may be rounder. And I think we do it inherently without kind of understanding that meaning. Okay, I also often do, I use a lot of call out, also like a thought bubble. They're really fun. And it also shows different information, right? So that's something that's maybe not explicit or out in the open. You can just contain it in a thought bubble. Then you know all of that information is something we're actually considering, as opposed to have openly put out there. Call outs, so the speech bubbles, you can also do a range of different ones, like round ones, square ones, a whole bunch. What I also love is the banners, like the flags and that. So that's a really easy way of doing heading. So this one is a bit of like a geometric one. We don't have the traditional ones anymore, but they're quite easy to do. So you just do a rectangle, and then you do like a smaller rectangle behind it. Try keep the width of it the same. So your front rectangle and the one that's sitting behind will sit maybe slightly above, but keep the distance on the top and on the bottom the same, so it's the same width. Does that make sense? So you do it like that. You can also do maybe like a curvy banner, and then you just join it, kind of the top left corner would then join to the back right one, and that gives that illusion of it going behind. One of my favorites is similar, but it's almost like an S and a backwards S, so you do a line like that. I'm stuck. Okay. Okay, so you do like a squiggly line. Then you bring it down, make your front banner, and then the line at the back, you just create your back banner and then join it like that. And again, you have that illusion of a flag. So there's lots you can do with containers. What I also like, and this is kind of the only exception to the rule of do your text first, is you can do a lot of image, like text art, text images. So if you're wanting to do like coffee, you could draw a really basic coffee mug, and then you could put the words coffee in there. And then it doesn't really matter if they're a bit squashed, because it's filling that object. So there's lots and lots you can do with containers. I think pretty much containers, your basic people faces and like connectors, you can do so much with that. Okay.
Have you picked up that we're going in order? So when you start, this is actually the order that you follow. So you're going to do your letters, then you're going to move on to things like your connectors and separators. You can start bringing in some of the containers if you want to at this point. Start working on people and emotions, and then start getting a little bit more fancy with the basic shapes. Okay. And then the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to introduce things like color. Have you noticed that Talia and I have picked up other things? We haven't only done stuff on the wall. We've also, we introduced the photos and the images. This is also part of visual thinking. Don't ever be afraid to use props in your facilitation, because it actually lends a little bit of something else. And I don't know, who's that band? OK Go did a TED talk where they brought in visual thinking in an amazing way. I'd highly recommend you go and find it. Okay. So we want to also be able to introduce color. A lot of people don't know how to use color. One of these, it's a basic color wheel. So those of you that did art at school, you've probably seen these, or if you've got kids in school. And they always show you colors that are complementary to each other. So those are going to be colors that are opposite on the color wheel. So if you want to have colors that just work, have a look at a color wheel. Okay, so you can either do this or you can look at ones that are side to side of the color on the color wheel. And it'll just give you a good kind of palette to work with. If you're doing posters, you can pretty much incorporate a lot of color. You can see we didn't apply any color wheel stuff on these. But when you're facilitating, sometimes it is nice to have complementary colors. And think about the different emotions that colors will bring into a conversation. So if you're trying to get a lot of lively, energetic discussions, you're probably going to bring in things like yellows and greens. Okay, if it's a warm kind of conversation, you're going to have reds and oranges. Be careful about using very cool colors, unless it's your company branding. So we often, when we go in and we facilitate workshops, if there's a strong connection with the company brand, we're going to use your brand and colors in our workshops, okay? Because a lot of people connect with their company brand. So that's it from the color side. What we do want to do is that something blowing over.
Is that the storm coming in?
It's crazy. Like, you should see this wind. It's mad.
Just one last thing on colors. Sorry, Angie.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Is just be cognizant of things like rag statuses. So a lot of people, it's very entrenched in the kind of subconscious. The red
so
is
rag,
like
for those of you
bad.
that have never been in waterfall,
Yeah.
red,
amber, green. Green, we're on track. Amber, uh-oh. Red, oh no, everyone's getting fired. So just be careful if you're using those colors that, people aren't associating red with danger.
So on that point, why do you think you use red Post-it notes for impediments on your boards? No one wants their name on a red Post-it note. Red has a psychological association to it. So if you want people to do something really quickly, write their name on a red Post-it note. And it happens.
And there are also digital color wheels now, which are awesome. So you
Yeah.
can pick a color, it'll give you complementary.
So once you can incorporate some color, and there's a couple of ways you can do it quite quickly. Again, this is at the end for a reason. You're not going to include color if you don't have time. It's not about making stuff look pretty. Okay, so we're going to include it only if we've got the time to do it. So there's a few ways you can do color. So the first one's cross-hatching. We use it a lot in sketchnoting because it's the quickest way to actually color in something without actually using a color. So cross-hatching is this one, where you draw lines. And you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, I drew them closer together, and then in the top right-hand corner, they got further away. Why did I do that? Where's the source of light on this picture? Okay, so I don't know why we think like this, where the light comes from the top right. When I see Americans draw, they draw it the other way around. I don't know why. But in South Africa, when we look at a piece of paper, we tend to say that the light source will come from the top right-hand side. So whichever way you do it, just make sure you're consistent. Because if you start putting coloring and shading effects on different sides of an object, it's very confusing for the human brain. Okay, so people will start focusing on the fact that you did shading from different sides of the picture, and they're going to forget what you're talking about. Okay, it sounds silly, but it's true. Stifling, that's just really the dots. So you can get some really cool effects with this. You have to take a lot of time doing this. But like if you've ever seen some of the great artworks that have been done, I mean, stifling is amazing. And then the final one is invest in very simple crayons. We like the ones with flat edges because you get to cover a lot of surface. So all of our posters have incorporated a lot of crayon. So when you are having to prepare posters, which you tend to do before you facilitate a session, you can quickly add some color with these. So they don't have to cost a fortune. We do ship these in from Germany, but there are some really good ones locally. Just try get the ones with a flat surface. I don't know if it's going to work on this wall, but they are really cool to very quickly kind of get texture. Okay, so that's a really good way to very quickly get color. Okay, how are you guys feeling about those basic elements? Because this is what we consider the basic elements of visual thinking. You can go so much further, and in the back of the booklets, you'll see there's a lot of our favorite references. So where we learned how to do this came from, you'll see those references are at the back. But what we want to do now is we want to play a game. You ready for a game? Yeah, okay. Our game is called Visual Jam. And you'll turn your book and you'll see there's a grid with six place for 6 pictures. Talia's going to do it with you as well. And I just want to quickly go over what you're going to think about in Visual Jam. Try not to incorporate letters right now. You can do it when you're doing the facilitation. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to build up a visual library that you can start using with your teams when you go back. And you can start with any images around the house where you go through and you name a whole bunch of objects and you draw a picture for them. So we're going to time this. We're going to give you 30 seconds per word. Talia's going to draw at the same time, and I'm going to help with the timing. So everyone's going to pick up a pen, and does everybody know what to do? So we're going to draw images. You're going to draw pictures for the word that I give you. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to draw that picture.
It's a way of kind of practicing how to visualize words, if that makes sense.
Okay. So the tips, these are important. Are we going for art? What are we going for? We've just done this exercise. Okay, this is the one that you're going to think back to. Think about your basic shapes. And that's what you're going to use to listen for the imagery in the word and try and turn it into a picture. Over time, what happens is if you do this often enough, you land up with a handful of images that are your default, they're your library. You kind of go back to them every single time. And you're going to use them in your workshops, and you get really, really good at drawing them quickly. And that's what we start doing with this visual library that we're creating. Okay, you ready to start? I'm just going to randomly pick some words. These are words I've heard in meetings all the time, and they're really good to know how to draw. So your first word is planning. You get 30 seconds to draw it. It would be easier if I gave you cats. That's why I didn't. Planning. Okay, time's almost up. Okay, your next word is management. Oh, you hear these words all the time. What's it? It's like meeting bingo.
Yeah.
Management. First word was planning, second word, management. You've got 10 seconds left. Okay, third word, passion. Passion.
Please keep it peachy.
Passion about your work. Okay, next word, collaboration. Yeah, do these all sound like words that you're going to hear? Okay, next word. I'm going to use a word that came up at this conference in the States because it's just as relevant there as it is, I think, in every other country. Corruption. You're not going to maybe hear it a lot in your meetings, but it's something that comes up a lot in conversation now. Corruption. Very politically incorrect word. I'm sorry. Okay, the final word that all Agile coaches love is transformation. Transformation. Okay, time is up. What we are going to do now is something you're not going to be comfortable with, but you're going to lift up your pictures and you are going to show everyone. Lift them up, be proud of what you've just drawn. Show it around. Have a look at each other's pictures and get some ideas.
I wish somebody was saying like, word quality is a good word too.
That's cool. Very cool.
Okay, guys, lift them up again. I want to take a picture.
Cool.
Okay, one last time, guys. Lift them up for me so I can take a picture and tweet it. I want to tweet it. Lift it up, lift it up.
Okay, one last time. Lift them up,
Lift them
guys.
up, lift them up. I need to see these pictures. Why do I want to tweet them? Because I want you guys to build up confidence about sharing your images. Okay, really important. It's great if you come to this workshop and you start practicing a bit. But the trick is going to be leaving and using it in your day-to-day work.
You guys, that's a good job.
Okay, that's the most important thing. Did everybody see Talia's, by the way? Everybody have a look at Talia's because I just want to draw your attention to something. Did yours look like Talia's? No, because Talia is very, very creative and she has done this for years. Okay, never judge yourself on someone else's. Really important. Because if you do that, you will stop doing this in your work environment. And you're going to lose those 65% of people in your team that learn visually. You're going to lose them just because you're too embarrassed to put pictures up. So you've got to start building up the confidence. And the way that you do that is just keep practicing this. That's how Talia got this good. Didn't just happen. I promise you, she's not. You're a little bit autistic, but you're not. She's not what you think she is. Okay. So she has to practice to do this, and so do you to get better.
But also sharing it. I mean, when I walked around now, I got some awesome ideas on how I would do it next time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think this is necessarily the best. Like everyone else has more creative ways of doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now what we're going to do is we are going to give you, I don't know, about 10 minutes. You are going to either pair up with someone or form a threesome. I'm okay with that. We're very not conservative in South Africa. We were not allowed to say that in the
weren't
States.
allowed to say that in the States. We got in
I got
trouble.
a smack over the wrist for that. So you're welcome to either form dyads, which is the couple, or triads, which is the three people. Okay. So either pair up or form threesomes. And what you're going to do is you're going to come up with an idea of something that you want to draw. We're only giving you 10 minutes, so no art is going to be included. You can either think of an idea that you want to draw, so think about a poster, maybe explaining a concept to people in your team, because posters are easier to start off with than going straight into visual thinking, because posters you can put a little bit of prep work into beforehand. We've got a whole bunch of ideas. Talia's got them in her hands. So they are either statements from the Agile Manifesto, or so either the statements of value or the principles. There's the 5 dysfunctions of a team. There are Scrum artifacts in there. So if you aren't sure of an idea, just flag down either Talia or myself. We'll walk around with them, and it's just to kind of sow an idea if you're kind of stuck.
It could
We're gonna
also
give
be
you-
something, sorry, that
Go ahead.
you've picked up over the past kind of day and a half here at Agile Africa. So anything.
Yeah, anything you like that you heard. But the trick with this is don't try work with another person, okay? Because they're going to give you some ideas that you wouldn't have thought with on your own. And we're going to give you 10 minutes. You're going to create a poster, and it's going to be on that A3 paper that's in the middle. So we've deliberately not given you enough for each person to have a sheet. But if you do need some more, just shout, and we will walk around and help you, but that's going to be what you do for 10 minutes.
So there's A3 paper.
So guys, for those of you that need a tip on how to do this, do a small version first and then blow it up bigger. Okay, if you're worried about just committing straight to the A3. Guys, you're halfway through, and if only one person has got a pen in their hand, you're not doing it right. If you've only, I'll tell you now.
That means time's
So
up.
time is up. Quickly lift up your posters. Let's have a look. Get some shots for Twitter. Oh, where's my camera? I'm not getting
Where's
this
your-
table at the back.
Very cool.
And that table's put them down. Okay. So, how did you guys find that? Cool? Fun? Was it hard? What if we had started? Let's
Okay,
just get
guys.
attention back in the room. We can do the hand thing. Don't make me do the hand thing. I hate the hand thing. Okay. So if we had started off with that exercise, how difficult would that have been? A little bit harder. Okay, so we just do that as a practical activity just to reinforce the concepts that we've gone through, because it's better to kind of practice here. It's a bit more of a safe environment, but don't stop practicing. Like, that's the most important thing here, is you want to take it out, you want to start building up your visual library when you go back home as well. Okay, should we go to... So you know the
Put
Scrum
table
values.
here.
Do you guys know the Scrum values? The 5
can you all
Scrum
see?
values, not the Agile values, the Scrum values. So the cool thing about the Scrum values is they apply to a lot more than just Scrum. Like, they apply to any kind of thing we work on. So we decided to take them and apply them to visual thinking.
Okay, so the first one is respect. Okay, so the way that we see this is respect yourself and respect others. So the comment in the beginning of the session where someone said, oh, someone laughed at my drawing and that's why I don't draw anymore. So we want to create a community where we're not judgmental, but where we're supportive. So respect yourself, respect the work you've done, and respect other people, because it's about the thinking, and it's brave to actually show your work on social media, to put it up in front of your team. So just be respectful of what people are trying to do.
And share it. Be open about what you've done. Okay, so if you copy Talia and I in on your, if you've done some sketch notes or something else, we will tweet it, because we're proud of what you do. And you should be proud of it too. Get it out into the open, and you will stop being so hung up on if it doesn't look perfect. Talia does, if any of you don't follow her, she's Sketching Scrum Master. So she does a lot of sketch notes in conferences, and they look amazing because they're on a tablet. Mine are on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I don't like my sketch notes, and I still put them out. Okay, it's all about sharing, and other people get a lot of value out of what you do. So be open about it, be transparent, share it, and just be courageous. So like Talia said earlier, if you don't like something that you've drawn, draw a heart around it and move on. Don't get hung up over it. I promise you, we always draw stuff we don't love, and we label it, and you'll often see my sketch notes will just have a very quick heart, and I'm like, that was a good learning opportunity, and I'm going to have to practice how to draw that frog better next time, because I really draw bad frogs. And it comes up all
Frogs
the
are the
time.
worst.
I don't know why frogs come up so much. The imagery is there.
Okay, and then what was that about the frogs? Yeah, frogs. Running men.
Yeah.
Yeah, stick men are easier. Commitment. Okay, so it's also about practicing and building up your own visual library. So it may not happen overnight, but if you use it in your teams, you'll find that you and your teams will actually come up with a shared kind of library of images. So it'll become easier, it'll become quicker. And if you're doing it personally to Sketchnote, you'll find that you also kind of build up that vocabulary. It's like learning another language. So you have to practice, you have to commit to actually putting in the hours and learning. But also just try. A lot of people come up to me and they say, well, how do I do it? I'm like, just try. If you can't draw something, you're going to be like, oh, I need to learn how to draw that for next time. But at least you tried.
And the last one is focus, not focus on your drawing. Okay, that's not the focus we're talking about. What focus are we talking about? Listening to what is being said. Okay, because that's going to help you with your visual thinking. It's going to help you capture the essence of the conversation. If you get too obsessive about making your picture perfect, you're going to lose the whole thread of the conversation that you're in. So focus on what is being said, and just again, that commitment to just practicing at getting better at drawing stuff. And don't compare yourself to other people. We keep reinforcing this. It is so important that you don't look at someone else's and say, but mine doesn't look as good. Okay, the biggest thing here is to find a style that works for you. I am very cartoonish when I draw. And it's deliberate because it's easy. And if I get stuck on something and I'm not sure how to draw it, you know what I do? I Google the icon. Okay, because that's the simplest way you're going to draw it. So I wanted to draw the face of a lion in Sonia's talk yesterday, and I Googled lion, and I went with the one that fitted my style. There's a very specific style I like. I don't try and copy anybody else's. So the biggest message here is be yourself. And that's where we're going to end. Are there any questions for us? I feel like I should come and give you my mic, but I don't know how to do it without it being weird.
One of the questions that what our table asked is, how are we going to get our team, around to use this idea? Because as developers, some of them aren't the most creative type, they're more logical and straight to the point, and they're going to see that the pictures might be a bit of a waste of time, and they'd rather write it out. So how would we get this across to people developers coming and being like, these pictures might help you communicate?
So what do you guys think? What do you think would be good ways to kind of get developers to buy into the concept of thinking more visually?
I just say only a picture.
Yeah, because does it have to be a picture like this? Very often you find developers talk a lot, and they don't necessarily get up and just collaborate around a board. Even if the picture is squares and circles and arrows, that's a good place to start, and it's something that they're going to be very comfortable with at first. So
And
just get them up around a board. Everybody's got a pen in their hand, because if someone doesn't have a pen in their hand, there's a problem somewhere, and someone else is interpreting it on behalf of everyone else.
And I think it's, it's habit. Like if you do it more often, it becomes the way that you communicate. And if how many meetings have you been into where you left and you're like, oh, that's what I took out of that meeting, and someone else is like, oh no, it was actually this, and so if you actually encourage people and give them a pen and say, okay, draw it for me, our team actually, they actually decided that as part of our Kanban board, they'd have a whiteboarding session. So part of the design, before they started working on any item of work, they'd actually whiteboard it. And that becomes part of our documentation. They'd whiteboard the design together around a whiteboard, standing up, preferably, take a photo, goes on Confluence or whatever tool you use, and that's part of your documentation. So it becomes part of the team,
I've got a question for you guys, though. Where would you use this in your teams? When we're brainstorming? Retrospectives, we could maybe do posters for our retrospectives, or you can create a template. Maybe if you're doing something like an empathy map or something like that, you can start bringing a lot of the stuff in. Where else? What about when you're defining a user story, and to help people understand the impact on the user, you draw some pictures?
I was going to say something similar. For us, what we do is that depending on which specialist has to do it, developers are swords, analysts are shields.
Oh, cool. So we've got like little icons to represent,
If you're doing user story mapping, you can draw out the user story map. If you're using journey maps, you can do the same thing. So there's a lot of practical applications. Don't think that this is just purely for facilitation or just for sketchnoting in a presentation. There's many ways you can bring it in.
People
Even
will
just
remember
one-on-one
things.
conversations.
Yeah.
Sorry.
sorry, people remember things from the conversation better
Yeah.
if it was drawn out. Yeah.
Sorry, Wayne. You're
Oh,
gonna have to
sorry,
wait.
there's a,
I can't. Did you turn it on, Rian?
turn it on maybe.
Just speak loud.
Speak really loud.
So my question is quite personal because that's what I struggle with even when I make my notes here, is spacing.
So how do you get
ultimately
spacing right?
Yeah, ultimately the paper is the final container, right? And yeah.
So can
if
I
yours is
answer
right
that?
to the edges or the corners or
So can I answer that? It takes practice. So when you first start taking notes, do it on paper. So don't go immediately to an iPad. So Talia uses Procreate on her iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil. If you actually want to start really getting used to how to do spacing, commit to paper and you learn through mistakes, like we do with everything else.
So it is tricky, and I find that through sketchnoting you can see how people structure their talks. Was it structured in a way that you could follow easily and you knew they signposted up front so they're covering 5 topics? So now I know on my page I've covered 3, so I still need space for 2. You know, so actually, yeah, it's a bit of a contentious issue.
to me that's practical.
Yeah,
I
it's
can
a,
use that.
but it depends on the speaker, it depends on, you know, so it is a bit of a contentious issue. I say, like, if you can sketchnote someone easily, you know that their talk is easy to follow. Yeah, I'm digital now, so I'm,
You get to move it around a little bit.
yeah, yeah. But it's possible to do on paper, sorry.
To
Was it
what
Wayne?
extent are you drafting or rehearsing the thoughts in your head before you commit the image to the sheet?
So if we're doing posters, we put a little bit more thinking into the imagery because you do the posters beforehand and you can do that in facilitation, so you can think about the structure of your session. So if you've got a retrospective you want to run, you're going to know what kind of posters you're going to have. But what we want to get to is a point where we're not actually thinking about what we're going to draw. We just draw. And you listen for the imagery and you've got enough practice where you're actually just doing. And that's why that visual library, that visual vocab is so important to practice. So I do it with my daughter. We've got like a big sketching book, and we go through the house and we just draw stuff. And it's amazing how many household objects have, like there's a lot of metaphor, like you can use them for a lot of other things.
And it depends what the purpose is, right? So if it's to have a conversation with the team, you don't want to get too attached to your poster because you want people to pick up a marker and challenge some of the thinking. So it depends what it's for. If it's a template, then maybe you'd use sticky notes and keep your template so you put in a bit more effort. It really depends. You know, if it's your notes, then flip and do it as you go, you know.
So I know we're out of time. If anybody's got more questions for us, we are around. If I could just ask for your help, because there is another speaker coming in, and it's a lot of work to just kind of clear the tables. If you could put those little shapes back into their envelope, that would be a huge help for us. But thank you very much, and we are
Thanks so
around for
much.
questions.
Thanks.